Because you never know, you could be the next person to get cancelled for just a minor infraction, just a minor joke. Let's listen to some interesting information here.
I want you to remember why people are there at work. I would say that everyone is there because they need a paycheck. Now, need a paycheck, want a paycheck, whatever it is, it's all a matter of semantics. People are at work because they want to get paid. They are there to make money, or they are there because they are trying to build success for themselves professionally. Trust me, if neither of those things mattered, they would just be volunteering or staying at home on their couch with some bonbons and some Dr. Phil. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Now here's the thing, between those two different options where someone is there just to get paid and to go home, and between the person that is there because they want to climb the ladder, the first person might not be personally invested in that company and in the people that they work with, where the second person might be so invested in their own success that they are willing to throw their best friend, their mother, their cousin, their sister, whoever under the bus to get there. And you don't want to be someone who gets caught in that pathway.
The point she's making here is that, if you have long work hours, which typically many corporate jobs do have, there's always going to be some blurred lines, and you're going to have some inevitable friendships. I think that becomes unavoidable when you're working long hours, right? You might have accidents where you overshare about your personal life, because sometimes you do need to talk. The thing is, the workplace environment is so unnatural. It's not like the traditional environment you might have been in centuries ago when people work on a family farm or a family kind of local home craft, where you might be making textiles and making clothing, or as I say, working in a farm, where you're around people you can trust, family members, and you can kind of say what you want, you can joke around, there's more familiarity and a link, more of a tribal link, right? But when you're in a workplace environment, it's like you have to be on guard so much, even though it's kind of unnatural for you to do. And that's what ends up happening, is you end up accidentally letting your guard down, and then you end up having a conversation that maybe you shouldn't have had, and maybe could be leveraged against you, maybe an inappropriate joke, maybe something about your personal life and your relationship, and then a coworker gossips about you. It's very difficult to deal with that because you're working long work hours. You're going to have some level of personal life that bleeds into your work-life discussions. Now, I would recommend you can deal with this by journaling, keeping a record of, what your personal thoughts are, just so you don't inappropriately express yourself at work, maybe about some personal life stuff. So you can get it out your system by journaling, having voice notes on your phone. And, it's a very important point here she's making around how people are working for money. And I wouldn't say people are always working for money. A lot of the times they're working for money for some particular reason. Some people are just working a job that they might hate, or they might see completely pointless, and they're completely detached from, because they want to provide for their family, which they do care about. And you'll see this with maybe middle-aged men who might have, or women who might have, a photo of their family members on their desk. That keeps them going because they're really demotivated about the job, right? And the whole point is they would have no problem throwing you under the bus or blaming things on you to keep their position, keep paying for their, kids in private school, paying for whatever their wife wants, or buying expensive houses and things like that. So just bear that in mind. You're very disposable to them, and that's why it's important to be careful, with the company parties and co-workers, what you are sharing, because like I say, they see you as very disposable. Now, the one thing I'd advise you to always do is to focus when you are kind of feeling down and depressed and you want to express yourself, is keeping in your own mind your focus in terms of your exit plan. Because typically when you work jobs these days, you're not going to stay there for the long term unless you have those promotion opportunities available to you. You'll probably be doing a bit of job hopping to jobs that might pay well. Focus on that few years you might be working there for 2 to 3 years in your exit plan. That's what I try to do. The back of my work notepad is just little calculations. Okay, how much money could I make this year? How much could I save? How much could I invest? How much could I make a few years from now if I do hop from this job to another? And focusing on that few year exit plan, because that will really keep you motivated. Instead of venting at work about one thing or the other about your personal life, you can make a quick note about it just to get your thoughts out that way. And if you focus on your exit plan, your side hustle, or your hobbies, you can kind of keep your mind there, and that can get you through the work day rather than keeping your mind on work that might be depressing you, or personal life issues that kind of lead you to be venting things at work that you shouldn't vent, right? So being emotionally detached at work is very important. And there's a very funny classic tweet that exemplifies this, right? Some of you might be familiar with Lindy Man Paul Scalise on Twitter, who discusses some of these kind of funny dynamics at the workplace. And he says here, 2 tips for 4-hour life, which refers to working hours where you only have 4 hours free. But listen to these 2 tips, because this is the reality. It's quite brutal. Learn how to be completely numb at work, to not feel like a SW worker, S worker who's working in a brothel in a third world country, servicing 30 clients a day. Just shut it all down. Learn how to get stimulation outside of work that doesn't cost much. This is very important, and it's kind of a funny joke, but this is how you should see a lot of work and a lot of work meetings. You have to be completely numb to it and pretend like it's not happening. And he gives the example of a S worker in a brothel, and she's just dealing with different clients. But that's sometimes how it is when you're at work, right? You might be dealing with, depending on your job, JIRA tickets, various work cases that you're going through, and it's just completely meaningless, numb work. You have to be kind of numb to it. And what he mentions here about creating stimulation outside of work is very important. So a lot of people, their personal identity, if you've noticed these days, is not about their race, it's not about their gender to the same extent it was in the past, I would say. People find identity with what they do. So lots of people would find really deep fulfillment, for example, from doing martial arts, or maybe some people take dance classes, or they have some specific hobby. And that's where you should kind of place your mind when you're at work, because that will keep you going. And those hobbies, they might sound completely pointless and meaningless, but that really is a coping mechanism, and it's the healthiest coping mechanism. It's not like spending time on Netflix too much, or just drinking alcohol and things like that. Having those healthy stimulation that keeps you motivated will really give you the fulfillment, because the fulfillment you're looking for your job is just not going to come there, right? Only some people really fit in the corporate environment and play the corporate game. Many people, it just becomes a job sooner or later. So just bear that in mind.
Life at all. No, you work with these people every single day. You probably want them to know a little something about you. You probably want to know a little something about them as well. And if you don't, totally cool, but then you're probably not watching this video in the first place. Here's the thing. Ultimately, you are going to have to navigate for you where the lines are between your personal and your professional life. You also need to learn where the lines are for the people around you. And for this, I really encourage you to keep it superficial. I encourage you to run the things that you share through a filter. Does this make me look professional or unprofessional?
So this is important, right? It's, as I say, important not to vent about your personal life, and keep it generic and brief until people take the hint. Because the thing with people is they just love to keep pushing for more details about your personal views, about your personal life, until they find something they can latch onto, that they can gossip about, they can leverage against you, make you look crazy like a right-wing conspiracy theorist, or that you have some kind of unusual personal lifestyle choice, all types of weird things. People are really miserable at work, and they need something to kind of gossip about. So just bear that in mind, right? So an example would be, what did you do on the weekend? I might say, I spend the weekend with my friends or family, or on a vacation, things like that. Just keep it brief, keep it generic. Because otherwise people just keep pushing. So another reason why it's important not to share too much about your personal life is that they're not going to give you good advice. They're not people you can trust. As I say, they're people who might be dealing with their own insecurities, their own entitlement. There's a hierarchy in the office. They want to push you down because they don't want you to be doing better in life than your manager, even though you might have made better life decisions for your health, for your wealth. You might have saved and invested, things like that. You might be closer to your financial freedom goals, or in a better, healthy relationship. People are really caught up in a crabs in the bucket mentality. So when you might mention something at work, lots of times I notice with people, they give you deliberately bad advice. Even if you're not asking for advice, they'll give you unsolicited bad advice, and it's like, hold on, why are these people deliberately giving me bad advice? Because they want to keep you down. They want to sabotage you and your personal life, and this is how petty people really are. So typically, when you're around people you can trust, they will give you good advice. At work, people will just make disparaging, cheap shot comments at you. And one thing I realized, particularly as a man, or people in general, but I would say particularly as a man, our psychology is based on evolutionary psychology. If you look into it, we existed in tribes of close-knit communities of people you could trust. Men would go out and hunt and trust each other when it comes to dealing with the wilderness. Women would stay on the campsite, the tribe campsite, to maintain where they were living. So you kind of had this very tight, close-knit community, but people would have to trust each other. They would have to rely on each other for survival. So it's very important, tense moments, but people were very close together. But now you have these workplaces where it's like a revolving door. Your manager, I remember working for a company where for 4 years, I had a new manager each year because each manager didn't like the senior management above them. So it's like, there's no like close-knit trust and honor between people of doing the right thing by people. It's just kind of an exploitative game, right? And instead of having these hardworking, productive people you can trust with your life, in a sense, you're dealing with lazy people, people who are passive aggressive, people who will have excuses and deflect and refuse responsibility, refuse accountability, and blame things on you or others. And they'll have so many excuses for their behavior. So these are the type of things you have to be careful of. You're dealing with a very slimy, greasy environment, which, as I say, long term is unnatural. That's why focusing on your financial freedom might be the best option, rather than focusing on climbing the corporate ladder or finding co-workers that you can trust, because it's just not that type of society anymore. And what she mentions here about having a filter between what you say to make sure it's professional versus unprofessional, I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think what you say, can this be used against me, or can that be portray me as someone who fits in, right? Are you saying things where they can label you as a good conformist, a good normie, a good NPC, or as an outcast? Are you in the in-group or the out-group? I'll give you a simple example. I remember working on the trading floor one time, and again, you deal with so many ridiculous co-workers. He was this typical liberal kind of character, believed all the mainstream narratives on everything. And he asked me, oh, what'd you do on the weekend? I said, oh, I went to a restaurant and I thought it was interesting. They had bottles of water which were fluoride free. And there's a company from America called SAKA, which does fluoride free bottled water, which I thought was kind of interesting, right? Because some people think it's a bit of a conspiracy theory that fluoride is bad for your health, and other people look into the health aspects of it, and fluoride is quite bad for your pineal gland and can lead to Alzheimer's and things like that. But I didn't go into all of that. I said, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I know some people, and this guy started raging. He started raging. That's a conspiracy theory. What are you talking about? You're always coming up with these cynical ideas. And I'm like, whoa, you just asked me what I did on my weekend. I just mentioned a small little detail. Then he starts Googling, going on Wikipedia to find how fluoride isn't bad for your health, and I'm just a conspiracy theorist. And then he ended up landing on Wikipedia on one section where it did mention fluoride being bad for your health. And again, I'm at work to work. I don't want to discuss my weekend. I don't want to discuss my personal life. But this is what I mean. If you have any little detail that doesn't fit in with the conformist NPC state of mind, they're going to launch an attack on you for no reason, because they're miserable in their own lives. That's why sometimes it's like you just can't win with these people. You just can't win. And I was thinking about that. What would make me fit in with these co-workers? What do they do typically on their weekends? A lot of them lived in a similar part of London, West Hempstead, Hemel Hempstead, which is slightly overpriced place to rent a property, but it's kind of a nice area. They would hang out in the park there, go drinking, hang out at the bars, discuss their liberal feminist ideologies and philosophy and things like that, go on skiing trips. And it's like, I'm not going to change my entire personality in my weekend just to fit in with these people. I'm here to work. But it's such a social status game there, and a social circle game, not just social status in terms of job titles and things like that, and buying expensive watches or cars. It's a social circle game. Are you in the circle with the right opinions, or do we need to kick you out the circle because you have the wrong opinions? And that's another reason why co-workers aren't your friends. So also remember, those double standards do exist. I'd had this male co-worker, the same guy at the time, who would, technically my manager, he would have all these double standards where he would judge you for the smallest wrong opinion, but he would tell these kind of graphic stories about his personal life, about getting too drunk and swearing and shouting about his stories about getting drunk and doing this and doing that. But if you have anything that's, like I say, slightly politically incorrect, he will completely be gunning for you like you're a crazy person. But he would go on about all these like bad lifestyle choices he was making in his personal life. So you've got to be very careful about these type of dynamics. It's all sorts of weird co-workers that will just look to flip on you and destroy you in a public setting. You know, if you're on a trading floor, if you're in an open plan office, anything that one person says, the next 20 people around you or 30 people around you can hear. So just be conscious of these type of toxic people.
have the conversation, but not in the office, not at the coffee station where someone's gonna overhear it. Take it outside, people, take it outside. Things that involve your dating life outside of a committed relationship, unless it's a really hilarious bad Tinder date story that is at worst PG. Anything involving money, whether you have too much of it or not enough, squabbles that you're having with your parents, any drama that you're having with your friend, your significant other, your dog, or any information about your health that isn't necessary for everyone to know is probably something that you should not be talking about at work. And I know that sometimes when one of those things goes wrong or you're experiencing that stress, that it can be really challenging for you to maintain a positive attitude at work and for you to bring your best to the office so that you can stay engaged, keep your colleagues liking you and all of that fun stuff. But it is really important for you to practice this because it is something that can really have a dramatic impact on you.
And that people overhear a lot, as I was saying just before this clip, around people can twist and turn anything you say, and be aware that men gossip too as much as women. Women have a reputation for gossiping, maybe, the girls' toilets and things like that, but loads of men gossip. They want to judge. And what I realized with men compared to women might gossip about general things, but men want to place you in a pecking order or in the social hierarchy. You might call it the male dominance hierarchy, like Jordan Peterson talks about, right? And that's what you have a lot of guys. Oh, they're trying to size you up. Oh, how much weight you lift. Oh, how much money do you have. Oh, what was your previous jobs in terms of this? And they're trying to gauge like, oh, where do you live? What part of town do you live in? They're just trying to gauge where you fit in compared to them in the social status hierarchy. And one thing I'd say to you is, just don't participate in the social status game. There's nothing wrong with buying a nice tailored suit, a nice watch, living in a nice part of town, but so many people are competing with people who all started at different levels. You have some people who are popular and they might be making a lot of money and doing well in their career because they're popular in the office. You have other people who got a lot of money from their parents, or some woman who got money from a divorce, things like that. So many people are dealing with so many different social circumstances. If you try to lodge where you should be in the social status hierarchy, it's just not going to work out because there's so many unfair dynamics. There's people living on government benefits, having massive families, and you might not be able to afford to have one kid, but someone on government benefits has 5 and they're living quite comfortably. So it's a completely backwards society, completely upside down clown world. So don't really get too caught up in playing that social status game with a lot of men or people in general. And what she mentions here is anywhere near work, you could be around your co-workers. So if you want to have a meeting or an informal chat with a co-worker you're on good terms with, and you're not the type of person to snitch on you and things like that, just try not to have any personal life discussion around the coffee shops near your workplace or the lunch places and cafes around there, because you never know, you could be next to co-workers who are going to go and gossip and overhear you. I remember when meeting with some of my friends outside of work who were working, I worked in finance, and people who worked in law, and they were my friends from university, and I would always make sure that when we meet up at a completely different location, nowhere near the offices of the finance industry in London. So we went to, for example, a sushi place that was several train stations away, because I'm like, the likelihood of a co-worker overhearing me saying something politically incorrect or making a joke is very unlikely. But that's how you deal with people these days. You've got to be extra careful how judgmental people can be. As she mentions, money, relationship, family, but now everything's politically challenging to discuss. So it's not just keeping to yourself things about your money, your relationships, your family, your religion, your politics, your personal life choices, what you do in your free time. All these things, you just give grey, vague answers so people don't kind of judge you for it. And as she mentions here, what gets discussed, well, she doesn't say it, but I'll say it here. What gets discussed in the dark always comes to light. So just that kind of phrase, bear that in mind. What conversation you have with one person will eventually be discussed by another 20 people. So when I talk to someone at work, but increasingly outside of work, because people don't have honor or dignity in terms of respecting people's privacy, you're talking to one person, you're really talking to everyone they know, because people have no ability to keep things to themselves anymore. So it's easy to vent, to speak, to relieve the pressure at work, but people remember every detail and they'll remember it and mention it years later. I remember one time making a joke about a co-worker's age, and he didn't mind making jokes about himself and his age, but he took it personally and brought it up later to make a disparaging comment about myself. That people remember every single detail, and that's why it's very important to bear that in mind. And there's a very interesting comment here we're going to look at. Here's the comment at the top. It says, I worked with 50 to 75 people for over 13 years. I knew their children, saw them get married, signed their birthday cards. In 2017, I had to leave my job due to a health issue. 2 of those people have reached out to me. I'm not even mad, just reminding people that co-workers are not automatic friends. So again, this is a case where someone had worked for over a decade, 75 people, dealt with a health issue, and only 2 of those people reached out. So it really goes to show how your co-workers, they're not your friends, they're just friends out of convenience because you happen to be in the same place. And the same thing, to be honest, applies when you're in college, when you're in university, high school. You just happen to be in the same place. One thing you realize is you just happen to be in the same place. You're not necessarily around people who have the same values, the same goals, and the same culture as you. And I don't even mean culture in terms of race. I mean that in order to have a functioning society, a functioning workplace, you need to have people with similar values, similar goals, and similar culture. If you don't have that, then anyone can apply their values and push that on you. So I'll give you a funny example here. I remember being, again, on the trading floor with this particular toxic person who was technically my manager, even though he behaved like a middle-aged man-child. One time, the topic of spending money on the first date when you go on a first date with a woman came up. And I said, well, if we have gender equality, then men and women should pay the same price when it comes to going on a date, 50% each, right? If you have men and women going on a first date. And he started shouting, oh, you think all women care about is money? And he was deliberately trying to make me look bad. And I looked at him and I was like, why is he doing this? Then I realized we're on a trading floor. We're around several other people. Many people heard that comment. And I was like, I didn't actually say that. And I realized this is how people try to set you up, to make you look like a misogynist or a bad person, things like that, just by kind of manipulating the perception of you. So it's always something to bear in mind how crazy some of these people can be. So let's learn a bit more about being careful around co-workers and what you say around them, right? This is why hanging out with your co-workers at after work drinks, work parties, and discussing things about work and co-workers, managers can be a very bad idea. So you have to be extra careful when you do spend time outside of work with your co-workers.
And he asked me what seemed to be a pretty innocent question. He said, so what do you think of the new boss? And the context of that was that there was a new supervisor at that location who was very inexperienced and had just gotten promoted into his first leadership job. So part of my job was helping him develop as a leader, and in particular with the recruiting and dealing with employee relations issues. So I made a comment that I thought was relatively innocent. I said, yeah, Joe's doing well. He's relatively new to his role, so he's still growing, and I'm helping him with some things. And he just nodded in agreement, and that was the extent of that conversation. And then we just finished off the rest of our night. Sure enough, next week, I get a call into my boss's office, and she says to me, hey, have you been having conversations with the employees about the leadership team down there? And I said, what do you mean? She said, I got a phone call from a very upset Joe who said that you were out spreading rumors about him to the employees that he wasn't a good leader. I immediately knew what she was talking about when she said that. And I said, oh, it's because of this guy, isn't it? She said, yeah, that's the person who first thing Monday morning went right into his office and said, Brian doesn't have any faith in you as a leader. And I'm sitting there just like dumbfounded going, how dare this guy break my trust like this over a very innocent comment? So of course I tell my boss what happened and that I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And she said, well, you're going to have to clean up this mess and you're going to have to go and make amends with Joe, because if you don't, you're not going to have a very effective relationship with him as an HR person. So I had to go down and have a sit down with Joe and explain to him exactly what happened, profusely apologize, and explain that it would never happen again. And
this is how bad it can get. He made one small comment, not even anything too negative, just about his manager going through some skill development, and he worded it in the typical passive-aggressive corporate environment, super professional way. Oh, he's just finding his feet and I'm helping him out, something like that. And then all of a sudden that turned into this guy going to snitch on you, this co-worker going to snitch on you to the manager, who snitches on you to HR, who comes back to you. This is the thing you need to be careful of. If you're going to a co-worker event, a work party, things like that, only try to make positive comments about co-workers, or keep it neutral, or just kind of avoid those type of topics. That's what I always say. One sentence can turn to a big problem that cost you your career, cost you your promotion, cost you $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, which you could benefit from, or a lot more, from getting that promotion. Because one little incident came on, it's like a black stain on your potential promotion. Potential being on the short list of promotions could be cut short for you because, oh, remember that one little comment he made? Maybe we should promote him in another couple years. And then all of a sudden, your earning potential goes down because you made one small comment that wasn't even that offensive. Just keep it neutral when it comes to co-workers and managers. Yeah, it's great working there. How do you feel about working here? Yeah, it's very enjoyable. I'm learning this, learning that. What's your opinion on this person? Yeah, they seem fine. I don't mind working with them. That's okay. Yeah, things like that, just keep it neutral. You never know. They might be close friends with the manager that they're asking your opinion of. And especially after work events, it's easy to let your guard down. You've been working for 8 to 10 hours, then you're going to a work Christmas party, things like that. You're kind of worn down, and keeping up that constant guard, it's like an extra level of pressure and tension. And that's what I mean. That's why you have to be careful then and keep it neutral. And you can end up dealing with a lot of trust issues, right? And then all of a sudden, HR doesn't trust you. You lose credibility in the company because management might think you're an untrustworthy person. These are the type of risks that you run when you do accidentally let your mouth slip, and as the phrase says, loose lips sink ships, and you just make one small comment, not even a joke, not even offensive, and all of a sudden it really does impact you.
There's an office on this planet that doesn't have an office gossip, and everybody knows who they are. And I'm sure if you're thinking about this, it only takes you a second to come up with the list of who the gossips are in your organization. And you can generally find them congregating together in either the lunchroom or the proverbial water cooler. And the water cooler talk tends to be with people who like to stir up drama and gossip about other people. The problem with it is that there's a very easy tendency to cross the line into oversharing or potentially saying something that you're going to regret later. But the even bigger concern is that you're going to be branded as an office gossip if you hang out with those people. Because here's the thing, you are who you hang out with. And so if you're looking to move upward in your career, don't hang out with the gossips and the people who aren't going places. Because like it or not, and by people, I mean bosses and the leadership teams, know who hangs out in which cliques, and just try moving up in the organization when you're branded that way. So if you need to go into the water cooler, get your water, say your hellos, and then leave. But don't get sucked into the drama, because that's where the drama usually starts in office settings. And in my
So while I generally agree with him, avoiding gossip is a good idea, I think it's a catch-22 situation where if you're not aware of the gossip, you're not aware of the social dynamics and how to be strategic, who's the power players, right? So it becomes a bit of a difficult scenario. And what ends up happening at most companies, there's like an inner circle and an outer circle. And the people in the inner circle, they know the right gossip. They're popular with the right people. They can leverage that to more career opportunities. And if you're outside that inner circle, then you're not aware of the gossip, you're not aware of the social dynamics, and you're kind of on the outskirts when it comes to getting promoted and being in the good graces of management. So it's really an interesting dynamic of how that works, right? And what I've realized is many good people, they end up left on the sidelines without stable careers because they don't get involved in the gossip. Not in the sense they're spreading gossip, but they're in the right social circle to understand the gossip and the changing social dynamics, like which team members are going to be leaving, which people could we potentially be hiring or moving from one team to the other. If you're not aware of that gossip, you kind of fall behind in terms of your career because you're not aware of how to maneuver it to benefit yourself, right? And then in my case, I've realized that if you're not someone who fits in with like I said, I'm focused on my experience here. We might all have different experiences. Many of the power players in the finance industry, middle management and senior management, they're typically middle-aged white liberal men or feminist middle-aged white women, right? And if you don't fit in that social circle, or you can't get into their inner social circle or do something that benefits them, it becomes very difficult to progress your career because you're playing a game that they write the rules to, essentially, socially at work, right? What their sensibilities are, what their interests are, what their political opinions are, what their hobbies are. And if you don't kind of fit in with that, whether it's wine drinking, skiing trips, things like that, it can really hinder your progress, and you're on the outskirts of that kind of inner circle, and it's not necessarily a meritocracy where you can really succeed, right? It's written by Robert Greene, and law so much depends on your reputation. Guard it with your life. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. Through reputation alone, you can intimidate and win. Once it slips, however, you're vulnerable and will be attacked on all sides. Make your reputation unassailable. Always be alert to potential attacks and thwart them before they happen. Meanwhile, learn to destroy your enemies by opening holes in their own reputation. Then stand aside and let public opinion hang them. Now, this is a very interesting dynamic, right? I think you can really leverage this in so many ways. If you dealt with a really toxic manager and they put you up for a layoff and you leave the company, it's up to you. And again, it's up to you how you deal with things. But if you wanted to leave the company, collect your layoff, your severance package, and then through the many major corporations that have anonymous forms that you can fill to provide feedback after you've left, or for employees who are currently there, like whistleblowing, you might want to make a full breakdown of how toxic the manager was, which could negatively impact them, and again, open holes in their own reputation. So that's one thing. But when it comes to your reputation, you have to think carefully about how you're being perceived. And that's very important for your survival in the kind of corporate environment. And the thing is, as I say, the catch-22 situation is if you're quiet, you don't get involved in gossip, you're a bit unsociable, they might say it's a problem because you're not being a team player. If you're sociable and you know about the gossip, they might see it's a problem because you're getting involved in the gossip and the office drama. It's just like you can't win. The only way you can win is by being popular. Being in the office, like being popular at high school, is the most important thing because that's what they've turned the workplace into. It's not about who works the hardest, who's the most productive. It's about popularity over productivity. Now, there's two brief comments with a bit of additional context to finish up on, right? Be friendly with your co-workers. Don't be friends with them. So you're just being friendly. You're being nice with them. You're being kind of fake nice with them, not genuine friends where you share genuine details about your personal life. Don't add them on social media. I'd highly recommend you don't add them on social media. Loads of people have their social media under their real name. If you have an Instagram account, other accounts, obviously don't put them under your real name, apart from maybe your Facebook, because they can find that and then gossip about it without you knowing. I remember one time a co-worker gossiping about my Facebook profile picture. I didn't even add him on Facebook, but I remember him joking about a co-worker because he found me online. So these are the type of petty things people do. They just have any reason to kind of disparage you. And then it says at least one person you work with will stab you in the back without hesitation. And there's many people at work that will stab you in the back just to gain some popularity points at work, because that's what matters. Your employer doesn't care about you, and they probably don't care enough to sort out the facts from the gossip, and that's very true. Everything's about perception. People can throw so much negative gossip on you that isn't based in reality, but only takes a couple female co-workers, a couple popular co-workers to put a negative perception around you, and then it impacts your career for the rest of your time at the company, or even broader in the industry. And then there's another 4 final points here. Be careful around oversharing, which we covered before. Avoid gossiping. Avoid negative co-workers, which can really have a negative impact on you and how you're perceived. If you've got co-workers always grumbling and complaining and cursing about work, people might think you have the same negative attitude at work too, even if you don't. Just because you're being accommodating and acquiescing some of their complaints or letting them vent with you, then that can negatively impact your perception at work from the management, who are aware of those type of social dynamics. And then lastly, loose lips sink ships, right? So best not to overshare and best to be careful about what you do say. So I've worked for over 10 years in the finance industry at top companies like HSBC, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs. And I offer a career advice service with a link in description to help you navigate those difficult environments. Because at the end of the day, you're attending company parties, you're spending a lot of time with co-workers, you have to understand they're not your friends and how you can navigate those tricky dynamics to help benefit yourself and not let companies or co-workers manipulate you to serve their ends and cost you your career or potential promotion. So link in the description if you want to speak with me. 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.